Gentlemen, thank you so much for coming this evening. I really do appreciate it. I hope you enjoy the show. I think we've got a lot of good information for you tonight. Hope you'll tell your friends and ask them to join us. The more, the merrier. I want to talk about our upcoming train show a little bit. We've had a couple of meetings with all of the vendors, and they've gone very well, I think. Everybody is pretty excited about it, I believe. And I'm really encouraged with the last meeting that we had with them last night. So Saturday, this coming Saturday at 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time is the train show. I suggest you consider start logging in around 12:30 because we anticipate an awful lot of people coming. And Dylan and Marshall are going to be handling all of the technical aspects of the show, including letting everybody in, making sure that we don't have any security problems, and doing all of the share information on the chat functions. We'll be showing on the chat function everybody's, before they present, as they're being introduced, we're going to show the company name, who the presenter is, the contact information for them, and their logos will be there. At the end of the show, after everybody is finished, we'll put up a master list of everybody that has been presenting and what their emails are or websites, whatever their contact information will be. And we'll be posting it as a video on both my Facebook page and the YouTube archive channel of New Tracks for 1 month after the show. So if you want to go back and refer to who a manufacturer is and what they talked about and how to contact them, you'll be able to pick it up from that video. The show after that, on the 21st of November, we're going to have, thank you very much, vendors. All of the vendors for the first show have agreed to come back and participate in the second show, November the 21st. We'll be adding some more, a few more vendors to that show. And I'm asking all of the model magazine press to be involved with that show. So all of the 14 model magazines that we've been able to identify so far are going to be asked to be a part of the show, to talk about what their magazines cover, talk about their subscriptions, the cost of their subscriptions, the philosophy of the magazine, and most important from my standpoint, I think, is how people can get their articles published in the magazines. So we're going to have, I'm inviting 14 magazines as of this coming Monday, and the ones that I have on the list, and if you do not hear a magazine that you subscribe to or that you read, if I had to mention it on this list, please let me know, because I don't want to exclude anybody. The ones that I have are the ON30 Annual, the Narrow Gauge and Short Line Gazette, O-Scale Trains, Model Railroader, Model Railroad Craftsman, Model Railroad News, Model Railroad Hobbyist, S-Scale Resource, O-Scale Resource, N-Scale Magazine, N-Scale Railroading Magazine, HON3 Annual, and the Cowcatcher Magazine. Anything that I should add? Okay. So anyway, all of those are going to be asked to be a part of our second show. I think that's going to be awfully interesting and something different. You may have seen some of the publications appear from time to time at different train shows. This will be an opportunity where you can see them all and meet the people behind the magazines. As was said by TC a few minutes ago, if you will give your name, email address, and the scale you model using the chat function to Dylan Lambert, then Dylan will include you on our email list, and you'll get an email with all of the leak-in information and what it's about on all of our future Zoom events. It's your name, your email address, and your scale that you model. And just send the chat direct to Dylan Lambert. The next My Build program on our series is going to be October the 14th. And moderator of that is Chris Corse. And Chris did a great job on the last one, and we're looking forward to this one. So on October the 14th is your opportunity to share with us your models, talk about what you built or what you're going to build, and share it with us. So please bring some models to show. I also want to make sure everybody knows that we're now live streaming this event in addition to the live Zoom shows on YouTube. So you can watch us either through the Zoom live feed that we're on now, or through the YouTube channel, the New Tracks YouTube channel. That's really all I've got tonight. I want to introduce now our featured modeler, Mr. Charlie Rausch. Charlie is a very talented modeler. He's an ON3 guy, and he's going to talk to us about some of his models and show them, discuss some of his model building techniques and his modeling philosophy. Charlie, welcome. I really do appreciate you doing this for us tonight, and I look forward to hearing from you.
Hey, thanks a lot. I'm looking forward to doing this too. I don't have to go into share screen. I have a PowerPoint presentation that I put together to give you an idea of the things that I do. So let me go hit the share screen, and let's see if the PowerPoint comes up. Here it comes up. And then let's get to the slideshow. Share, hit the share button, Charlie. I'm trying to hit the share button. Okay. All right. I live in North Carolina in Chapel Hill, and I'm a member of the NMRA and the Carolina Piedmont Division, CPD 13. I've been playing with trains. Well, let's not say that. I've been in scale model railroading since 1950. I've been playing with trains a little earlier than that because they had funny wheels and they had 3 rails. But once I got to be 10, I said, trains don't have 3 rails. And I got really excited about HO, and I've been fooling around with trains ever since. I'm currently in the ON3 scale, which is ON3. It is not ON30. It came into being a little bit before ON3. It is a 3/4 inch track gauge, which happens to be what we remember as 00, because 00 was a 3/4 inch track gauge, and it's a 1/4 inch scale. All right, I have and I model the Rio Grande Southern in Colorado, and it is a kind of an alternate reality. In 1951, that wonderful line, the 161 line between Durango and Ridgway, Colorado, failed and became bankrupt. I'm assuming that it didn't. I'm assuming that its big brother, the Rio Grande, actually bought all the Rio Grande Southern trackage and upgraded the line because of, I don't know, let's make it a good thing. They found uranium, they found more gold, they found more silver, but we have an alternate reality. Now, we all can't model 161 miles. I mean, I have a basement room that is 36 feet long by 14 feet wide, but I just like the Rio Grande Southern, and I like the heft and the size of O scale. Now, I like modeling engines. I like modeling cars. I like modeling structures. I like running trains. I like operations. I like dispatching. I like car switching. As a kid growing up in New York City, my father and I and my brother, we would go to the local railroad yards and we would watch the little switchers switching trains. And that was a real big deal for us. So here we go. I am going to go through what the layout has. Okay. All right. The route of the Chapel Hill division of the Rio Grande Southern is that these are locations that are on my line. First is called Alamosa Staging. Alamosa Staging is a cardboard box underneath the layout that acts as if it was a car float. And it's basically eastbound staging. In this is general freight. There is a refinery. There are stockyards. All sorts of other freight can start or end at Alamosa Staging. From Alamosa Staging, we go into an industrial district called Casa de Dio. In Casa de Dio is a small yard. It has a brewery. It has electrical supply place. It has team tracks, car stock repair, scrap metal dealer. The next stop on the line is my version of Durango. It's in Division Point. The main line runs from Casa de Dio into Durango. And Durango has its own general freight house, an industrial tracks, a general store, coal tipple, yard tracks, and a full engine house and engine facility. From Durango comes to the next town down the line is Dolores. And Dolores is a small town, but it has a junction for a logging branch and a coal mine branch, very similar. And then in reality, Dolores indeed had the logging branch. There was a logging branch to the New Mexico Lumber Company out of Dolores, Colorado. The coal mine was halfway between Dolores and Durango in reality. But so it's pretty correct. The next town after that is the town of Placerville. Placerville is a midpoint on the main line. It has a passing siding for east-west meets. It has a stock pens, and it has what we call the Placer Mill, which was an industrial building. The town after Placerville is Rico. Rico Junction is a junction to the New Mexico Lumber Company, the sawmill operation. And it has a Durham supply place, and it has Rico Team Track and a few little businesses. The next stop on the line is the town of Ridgway, which I spelled my own way because in Colorado, Ridgway has no E in it. It is the Western Division Point. Again, it has a full engine terminal, and it has a couple of yard tracks, grain elevator, feed storage, supply, ice depot, general freight house, stockyards, and other things. From Ridgway, the next stop would be the Montrose Staging. That is the westbound staging tracks. So a through freight coming from Alamosa would run through all these towns and finally finish in Montrose Staging. And it basically is just local switching, which is what I really enjoy doing. Here is an overview of Casa de Dio. You can see the 3-tunnel and the yard track, the 3 tunnels where the staging tracks go. And you can see there is the brewery on the right side, and I'll go to the next. There is the electrical supply place, a couple of towns. There's 2 team tracks. There's a couple of retail stores. Now, after Casa de Dio is the town of Durango. And in Durango, the first thing you meet in Durango is the engine terminal. It has a very large coal tipple, and a turntable, 2-stall engine house, and all sorts of other stuff. After Durango's engine terminal comes the industrial trackage and the yard. The industrial track is that one spur that runs off on the right side to a freight house, to the Holtzman Mill Works, and to the grocery supply, or what I call the general store. The three-track classification yard is on your left. And there's a little switcher right in the middle of that photo, and that is the Durango switcher. here is just a quick shot of the general store and the front of the Holtzman Supply. And here is a little video of the little switcher. This little switcher is a Chemtron 060T. It was a brass kit that Chemtron put out somewhere around 1980. Now, I use JMRI operations, so I don't have cards or anything that like switch lists and things like that. JMRI produces its own manifest switch list, and it tells me what to do. It recognizes where each of the cars are, and it randomly chooses cars to put on a train. And one of the interesting things is that JMRI, when it chooses cars, here's an industrial track that has places for 4 cars. Has a place for 1 car at the general store, 2 at the millworks, and 2 at the freight house. And the JMRI will give you a switch list, and they will say, grab a car from the furthest part out, but leave 2 in the other spot. So you have to sit there and manipulate it. It's not like you in the cart system where you get to a spot, you just empty out all the cars from that particular siding. Here in Durango is one of the through trains coming through at the end of the day. And this is a through train that just finished its switching in Durango, and it's on its way to Dolores. It's a K37, the largest of the Rio Grande K-series Mikados. And the driver on this train is my 10-year-old grandson at the time. He likes running very long trains. Yeah, and we interchange with the East Broad Top. Like that really would be possible, right? Now, in the next town over is the town of Dolores, Colorado, and that's where we have the junction for the coal branch and the junction for the lumber camp. The lumber camp has a sawmill in Rico, and it requires the sawmill train to come down from the lumber camp, request permission to enter the main line, runs on the main line to the town of Rico, then exits the Rico and goes to the junction to where the sawmill is. So the log train is kind of like a joker in a wild card deck. It always has to have have secondary to all the other trains on the line, and it runs. And there are 2 log trains. There's one that's an empty going back, and there's a full one going down. So we have to meet the trains have to meet in Placerville to meet between to do the passing, and then they have to get out of the way of the mainline trains. Now, also in Dolores is a fuel oil distributor and a grocery supply. And you can see those buildings on your left, and you could see the coal branch switcher. On this today, that photo, the coal branch switcher is an Argent Lumber number 3, unpainted, but it has this great sound system. Here is the depot of Dolores. The depot of Dolores happens to be Grizzly Flats. If everybody remembers Ward Kimball and Grizzly Flats, that's the Grizzly Flats building. Okay. Oh, this is a picture of this video is of the eastbound through train from Ridgeway down to Alamosa. And these are the individual buildings inside of Dolores. That's the fuel oil depot. There's Joe Zeppi, who's a bootery. And the grocery supply place is on the left. The stores have, most of the stores have interiors. Some of the stores have little stories behind it. And this guy has a man on the side of the building doing what he shouldn't be doing. The through freight here is an ancient United K-27 that has been very highly upgraded with extra details and sound and all these other good things that we can do in O-scale. And you can see the coal branch switcher now is the little Bachmann 2662. Now that's all, this has been converted to ON3. I've put the ON3 mogul conversion axles on each of those drivers, changed the frame. And so the engine is indeed a full ON3 engine. Here is the town of Placerville. This is right up against the wall. It is just a plain passing siding, and it has you have a mill building right up in the front. Again, and if you notice, there's no scenery on that other than trees. All right, I haven't gotten to that part yet. This is the wonderful part of this hobby is that we have stuff yet to go. Here is the town of Rico. The line that's coming right at you is the line towards the sawmill. Here is the engine facility at Ridgeway. You can see the 6-stall Como roundhouse. There's a coal and sand tipple, maintenance away track, and cattle pens. And you know who the cattle dealer is? Cattle dealer is J.R. Ewing. You should remember that. And this is the overall yard view. Again, no scenery. There's no ballast on the track. There's no ground cover or anything. That's yet to be done. Here is the freight depot, and there's a passenger depot behind it. And now, what I did here is that I'm going to give you a 6-minute video of what would look like an engineer's view of what the layout runs. And here we're in the main line of Durango, and we're going to start the video. And I put a GoPro camera on a flat car. That's my son. It's his GoPro, and it was his finger that started that. The engine is the little 060T switcher. I will narrate minimally on this. Yes, I do have some unpainted engines. This is a C25, you see on your right. You're passing the yard on the left and the industrial spur on the right. That is a Lionel Rico station that was modified to remove the freight house. The engine is running at about 25 miles an hour, a little bit faster than it would run in real life. The logging branch was coming off on our right, and we were approaching the town of Dolores. That industrial building right in front of you is the coal mine. That's a scratch-built building out of styrene. And now we're coming into Placerville. Again, this is that undecorated section of the line. Now this trestle was rebuilt by the Rio Grande. This used to be a very spindly wooden bridge, a wooden trestle, and it was replaced with a big heavy girder trestle from the Rio Grande. It happens to be two Lionel O-scale 3-rail plastic trestles that were merged together, kind of cobbled together. And we're entering the town of Rico. Again, this is a little narrow shelf. And here we're coming into Ridgeway. There's a Gramps store, Gramps fuel oil facility on our left. And yard tracks. Again, there's no scenery, no rocks. This is just what you see is painted styrofoam. Because eventually that's all going to be rock wall. Now, where you see the tunnel, that's really where Montrose is. The trains going to Montrose at this point are, the cars are removed and put into the Montrose box. But I am taking you through the tunnel and you're going to come out in Casa de Dio. So this is the tunnel. This allows me to run through when I have open houses and people want to see trains run all the time rather than point to point. This is Casa de Dio. Here's the other view of the engine terminal. And we're back to Durango.
Charlie, that was absolutely magnificent.
Wait, hold on. I've got to, now we're going to do the logging branch. This is a logging branch. We're going to go from the main line in Dolores, and we're now being pushed by a 26-ton X, what's the name? Oh, Mishkal, a Mishkal number 5 Shay. Okay, so watch this. This is, oh, well, yeah. That's my son's fingers. So bear with me. Now this one goes a little slower. Again, this is about a 5-minute video, and it takes you from the Rio Grande the Rio Grande Southern Main Line, and we're going to diverge onto the logging branch. Hey, Bill, you're used to the logging branch, right?
It's my favorite.
Bill is our designated logging branch operator. He runs it from the camp down to the sawmill. Now it takes about, what does it take, about an hour to go through the whole process, Bill?
Yeah, that's about right.
Yeah. Now we divert off the main line, and we come up to coming on left that you see there, the shade, with the log buggies, that is that's the empty that was put in the hole. That track over there goes to the coal branch, but they use the coal branch as a hole for uh, when two log trains occur.
Oh, yeah, good old 12.
Yeah, it's 12.
This is just fascinating. I've never seen this kind of a view on any model railroad before.
Oh, there's plenty of guys on YouTube that are doing this. I have to tell you that if you notice, there haven't been any cuts on this video. You notice there were no edit cuts. This is an exact uncut version of the run. And they were just 2 runs, 2 takes. That was it, done. Now you can see it. You can see the main line is down there. Now you're climbing up a 4% grade around and this is that big hill that you have there on your left is Chapel Hill, because there's a church up on the top.
Has anyone yet done actually put one of those really small cameras right in the cab?
Well, you know what I thought about doing? I don't know about that yet, but I thought about doing a mock-up of a cab look, okay, and sticking that in front of the GoPro, and seeing if you could do it that way, to make it look like you're looking down the boiler through the cab window. There you can see the little 060 switcher down there. Now we're going over this trestle. It's a scratch-built trestle based upon trestle 51 on the Rio Grande Southern. It's all hand-built, cut board by board.
Whoever asked about the cab view,
Yeah.
there actually is a YouTube video where the guy does this entire layout as a cab view.
Yeah, but you need to have a camera that has the ability to focus, so that you don't have this black blur in front of you. That's really where the issue is. So, Bill, this is what it looks like when you drive up with the empties back to the logging camp.
Well, no, it does have that ability.
You got to say that again. I missed it.
It's time to run this branch and you didn't get interrupted. I said it'd be easy to run this branch and didn't get interrupted by those mainline trains.
Yeah, right. It is.
Really?
Now, a lot of these buildings and structures you see, these were all contest kind of quality things that I did to get my MMR. So. And you can see on the wall, there's showcases with a lot of HO stuff in it. And that's the layout. I had HO trains up until 2001. And I kept some of them.
Some?
A lot of them.
Well, I did have maybe 300. I do 100.
Is that enough trains?
Mom, does my wife have enough pocketbooks?
Well, to be fair, is there ever an answer to the question of, is there enough trains?
Yeah. Well, this we had a square foot challenge popular vote thing about 3 years ago, and I built that logging camp with a bunkhouse and water tower and showers and mess hall for the square foot challenge. And it isn't a square foot. What it is we figured out it's 17 inches long by 7 inches wide, which amounts to about 144 inches. Now this is where the logs get loaded. So anyhow, you got a view of the layout. All right, here is the sawmill. All right, the sawmill is in the town of Rico, where it's just a small branch that just props up and it runs around, and the logs get dumped in the log pond. And okay, let's see, do we have a video of this? We have a video here. So here Shay is coming in. Here's number 12. Shay is coming in, and she's going to run around the log buggies. And what you see here is, I don't know if you fellows know about a Danby sawmill. Keystone Model Works back in the 70s made an O-scale version of a little tiny sawmill. And that sawmill is what you see on your left. The building behind it, that's basically the little sawmill is a rough cut mill. And so the rough cut lumber is taken into the big building and cut and fined and made nice and whole, and etc. So I expanded the little Danby sawmill, and boop, boop.
Now, Charlie, I got to ask you something.
Yes,
That
sir.
Shay looks very familiar.
Yeah, West Side number 12.
Yeah, did somebody do that up for you?
No,
Because it's beautiful.
well,
Sunset.
I do all the painting, so I'm a
Ooh, that's
Second
excellent paint work then.
yeah. That was done, and that has a sound system. And I don't know if you fellows ever heard of a guy named Lee Snover, or a company called Lee Town Models.
I've heard of Lee Snover before. That's a
Okay.
name that's come up in
Lee Snover
conversations.
came up with a way to power that Shay. That was a Sunset Shay made by Sam Hansa, and it had a cog belt drive, and it ran. Most of those cog belt drives are generally poor, but Lee came along with an idea where he took the crankshaft and soldered the entire crankshaft, and instead of having a cog belt gear, actually put in a Delrin chain gear. And he's disassembled the crankshaft, put the Delrin gear in place of the cog gear, and then reassembled the crankshaft, put the whole thing together, and put a Swiss instrument motor in it, and is driven by a Delrin belt. Not a belt, but the Delrin chain that you can get at Micromark. It runs spectacularly.
Yeah, that the Delrin chain at Micromark and other places is actually made by ServoLink Corporation in Dallas, Texas.
Yeah, when Lee passed away, I wound up getting an entire roll of that, and I could supply the world with Delrin chain.
Oh, well, we'll just pay you then.
Yeah, I'm not greedy.
Okay, who's going to 3D print the gears?
No, you can buy those gears at Micromark. Micromark will sell you, a 5-inch length of chain and the 2 sprockets that run on it.
Yeah, ServoLink has like 32 different sprockets for that thing.
Yeah, they do. Now, how about if I give you a couple of shots of the different buildings and rolling stock and stuff like that, okay? Well, you saw my little 060T tank engine. This is a Chemtron brass kit, and it's a brass kit. It required a lot of work. I built this in 1986, and I updated it because I built it for a friend of mine. And this friend, he wanted an 060 tank engine, but he didn't want it to have it with the big headlight and the little tiny coal bunker. So he wanted me to modify it and put a regular headlight on it, and increase the size of the coal bunker, and stick air brakes on it, the whole thing, modernized it. And I wound up getting this engine, and I love it. It's so sweet. It is a sweet little engine. It has a tiny little can motor, and it has one of the first soundtracks, steam sound decoders in it, hasn't failed yet. I think I did that in, I think I did put that decoder in 2010. Fabulous little machine. All right. Here is the number 9 Shay. Bill, you know this one. This is also a Chemtron Shay that I built. It has, but this is it has the upgraded Grant Line drive in it. Here is, now we're going to go to some HO. This is an O-scale P-class Ontario and Western Camelback 280. I scratch built this engine. All right. It's made out of brass. The entire tender and all of that stuff you see is scratch built with the rivets and hand punch rivets, all the details. And it took first place in a MER convention, and I got 108 points on that thing. So I love this engine. I love the O&W. Okay, here's another engine. Now, this is kind of funny because I have you guys on the side. This is a Lehigh, New England 280. This is a Leetown kit. Leetown, again, Lee Snover came out with a kit that used a Bowser chassis, some white metal castings, and some brass fittings. The boiler is brass, the firebox is brass, a lot of brass details, a lot of white metal details. It is all soldered together. This is not glued. There's no glue on this engine. This one took first place in Steam at 2 years later in the convention. Here is an O&W Camelback 060 switcher. I did an article for Mainline Modeler back in December of 2004, and it featured this engine. This is a kit bash, or what I call a brass bash. This I took a nickel plate products for a 260 Camelback 10, a little Camelback 10 mogul. It was a mogul, and I took the boiler. I took the boiler and the cab. I cut off the firebox and made everything from the cab backward is all scratch built. The frame and the mechanism comes from an Paragon 060 Southern Pacific engine that dates back to about 1958, with a big open frame motor in it, gears unsprung, but it runs very well. The tender is it started out as a gem Pensy tender, and it's been highly modified to fit the O&W slope back tender, which unfortunately I thought that picture would show it, but I guess there's stuff in the way. And here's another brass bash that I did. I grew up in New York City, and I saw Long Island engines, and I saw Long Island steam. I like Long Island steam. And this is a Long Island G53 SD, which is Long Island's small 10-wheeler. It was built by Brooks, but it really looked like their 080. So I made the change. I scratch built the tender. I added a dome or two. I added the things that needed to be added, and I got the frame from an International 080 and stuck it underneath. And it fits perfectly and looks just like the C51A that the Long Island had. Here's another interesting brass bash. And that's since the Model Railroader and the NMRA magazine was talking about John Allen. I always liked John Allen, loved all his stuff, and they talked about the John Allen's little dockside. Well, this is GEM models back in around 1970. One of their first Korean imports was a brass version of the little Varney 040T. So I got that engine, but the mechanism was atrocious. I mean, it wouldn't run 4 inches at full voltage. So I got the mechanism from a Sakura, a PFM Sakura cast B&O saddle tanker, and I married the two. So now I have kind of a brass bash, but it runs very well. Beautiful runner. Now I also like the CNJ because I lived in New Jersey for 30 years. So I scratch built, and nobody ever imported any CNJ 280s, and I always liked 280s. So the engine on the left is a C39. That's a scratch built boiler cab firebox sitting on top of a Bowser mechanism. The one on the right is a C41 consolidation, also from the CNJ. Now, the C39s had larger drivers. They had 63-inch drivers, and they were more geared to the main line from east of Phillipsburg and running on the lines in New Jersey, whereas the C41s had 57-inch drivers, and they ran between Phillipsburg and Scranton. Now, this engine is a Red Ball 460 and the mechanism is from a Santa Fe, PFM Santa Fe 1950 consolidation. So again, it's a marriage between these. And I don't know if you guys remember, there was a fellow named Bill Shop who used to do brass bashing in railroad model Craftsman in the 1970s and early 1980s. And I used to read him every month looking for things that the really inventive things that he did. And I remember him doing this, that engine, the C41. And I did it the same way. Okay. Now let's talk about cars, rolling stock. This is the ON3 caboose for one of the log trains, and this is a board by board scratch built thing, and it's one of those contrast things that I did. And this was, and I couldn't. I made those steps, those individual steps. They're all handmade, hand punched rivets, hand soldered, the whole step thing, because I didn't know somebody actually made the castings for that. And the windows on the caboose slide on the cupola. Here's a scratch built Lackawanna wood caboose. This is a little tiny, what I call a transfer flat. This transfer flat, another one of these board by board construction things. And it doesn't even have brakes. I mean, it doesn't have any air brakes. It has one brake wheel that tightens the brakes on each of the trucks. That it doesn't work. I'm just saying that's how it functioned. This is a Rio Grande narrow gauge baggage car. This is a scratch built stock car. I scratch built this car board by board, a little nut bolt washer by nut bolt washer, and it was one of the cars that required that was used for the master builder cars. That one got 110, I think, on the NMRA contest. This is a freight depot. And I built this because I also had, in HO, I wound up building a lot of the fine scale miniature kits. And some of the fine scale miniature kits are really outstanding. And I kind of like this. So I took ideas from the fine scale miniature kits and I decided to build some buildings in O scale that way. So that's this building. And I did the same thing with the ice depot. This ice depot is the old John Allen ice depot that Fine Scale Miniature produced in their, I think they did a couple of runs on this. Here is Holtzman's millwork. Now the sawmill generates, machined lumber, and the machined lumber gets loaded into stock car, into boxcars and flat cars, and it gets sent over here to Holtzman's Millwork, and Holtzman's Millwork takes this nice lumber from the New Mexico lumber sawmill and makes windows, doors, panels, and all those wonderful things, and ships them out to other places. So this happens to be one of these toy train buildings called, I think, a company called the Meritown, and I kind of like squished it and cut it and did all sorts of funky things to it to make it look like it's a real building. Here's that logging camp. And that's the shay that pushed you up the logging branch. Here is a scratch-built 35,000 gallon water tank that I made, again, board by board. Each one of that's not a wrapper, that each board is individually done. And each board has been sanded and modified because the diameter of the tank is different from the bottom as it is from the top. It's a slight difference. It's an operating water tank. That spout is connected to a DCC decoder, and there's a motor in there, and the spout goes down and up, hopefully. Here is, this is a DPM modular buildings. I bought a bunch of DPM modules, and I built this brewery. It's in honor of my friend Ed Reagan and my son-in-law Kevin Barkin. They both like beer, so why not? The beer that they make is called Rebars. Okay, I mean, it's just, and that's it. So, how you guys? Any questions over there?
Well, I got to admit, your scratch building's fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
You should ask him, Fred, where's he live?
Where do I live? I live in Chapel Hill, North Carolina.
Okay,
Thank you.
Okay, that's not too far from where Bill lives, and Jack. Jack
Why?
and Bill both have been here. Jack has been one of the evaluators for the NMRA for me. So.
Well, I figure he had to live fairly close to you since he was operating that lumber.
Yeah, he likes that. Bill, last week, Bill says something about, I don't really like operating trains. I like building models. And I would say, don't have to yell at him and through the TV after he said that. I'd say, Bill, what do you mean? You enjoyed running these trains.
How long did it take you to get to this point?
I moved here in 2007.
Wow.
And I'm pretty prolific. I really get a lot done. I get stuff done.
And is the layout located in a basement or second story?
Well, I live on a golf course, and there is about a 25-degree slope from the front of my house to the back of my house, so that the downstairs, what I consider the basement, is a beautiful walkout onto the golf course.
Lovely.
Wow.
Lovely.
It's really very nice, and it happens to be a 14 by 36, and it sits under the section of the house that has above it, that has the kitchen and the laundry room, the pantry, and all that stuff. So I also have a very big great room in here that goes to waste, and I'm saying this would be a great room for the HO layout.
Good thinking. Like that thinking. Beautiful models.
And has
Beautiful
Mrs. Charlie
layout.
commented on that move yet?
I'm sorry?
Has Mrs. Charlie commented
Oh,
on that?
no, not at all. No,
He's
Mary.
trying to create a train layout with a house on top.
Yeah, I think that's what all of us do. All of us want to do that, And yeah, look, I have so much more to do. I mean, there are some buildings on there that are really questionable, and I have a bunch of York kits that are sitting on a shelf, and I'm saying, hey, it's time. It's time to do the York kit. I'm time to do this building and replace this. I mean, there's a Lionel RGS Country Day store on there. I mean, that's really crummy store, but it said RGS on it, and so I said, oh, that's a great placeholder. So when the time comes to do that, I'll put it in there. And then if you notice, there was a one slide of where I was had a shot of the stores in Casa de Dio. Well, there was a little hardware store, and next to the hardware store was a bar. And there's this tiny bar. I mean, it was, I think it was all of 10 feet wide and 20 feet long, you know, and it was great brick building. And I decided I like that one. I think we have to build that one and stick it on the side of the hardware store. So it is always things to do. But the thing I hate the most is ballasting track.
That's easy.
Oh, no kidding. I know it's easy. I hate it. You know what it is? The switches are just the killer for me. I mean, because at my age, going underneath the layout, because all of the switches that you see, they all function with DCC decoders. So they all have switch machines attached to it, and they're all wired, and they all go into a DCC, stationary decoder. So I can turn the switches from my cell phone. I run cell phone, or I can run panel. So that's the story on that end. Any other questions, you guys? Comments?
Very well done. Nice.
The locomotives especially, and I say that as a locomotive enthusiast.
Thank you.
No, I mean, seriously, like the camelbacks. Well, you know, you look at those and you go, "Well, it's a camelback," and then you start really digging into the weeds, and there's some serious variety to them.
Yeah, they really are. You know, one of the things, I mean, I got involved in, I was basically an anthracite modeler up until the fella I had built that 060T for. He went to Colorado. And in Colorado, he went into Colorado and he came back and he said, I got to have these engines. When he says, Charlie, when you see these trains, you're going to go nuts. He said, these are fantastic. So I built a layout for him. And I got a chance to build, that one of those coaling towers I built for him on his layout. I mean, that coaling tower that you saw in Durango, that's not a laser kit building. That is the building is called San Juan Engineering. And if you open that box, you would see about 4,000 sticks. There wasn't one sheet of any kind of wood in there. There was all sticks, and you had to build it. And that bin is all interlocked, where each board is interlocked with the other board. It is a board by board, and each board was stained before it was assembled. I mean, there's a lot of work in that. But I mean, I looked at it and I said, this is just phenomenal stuff. Then in the year 2000, my wife and I went to Colorado, and then I saw the stuff. And I said, "Holy cow!" The HO goes into the onto the shelf, and it gets put on eBay. And then this is because you can't imagine when you see these things run and what they look like. It's magnificent.
Great job.
But what I really like about the O scale stuff too. I mean, I'm an O scale guy. I do ON30. I'm one of those weird guys.
It's not weird. They got to remember, I got into this ON3 before there was ON30. There was only one guy who had written some article, a guy named Gordon North. I don't know if you've ever.
I've heard his name many a times.
Right. Yep. Well, Gordon North came into being, and I mean, he took a Mantua Mikado and made an ON30 version of one of the K series of the Rio Grandes, and he built a whole ON30 layout. And I remember going to see. He would bring it in. He would bring part of the layout to the narrow gauge meet in Kimberton. I don't know if you ever were so lucky to see that.
I was lucky enough to go to the final Kimberton meet.
Yeah. I used to.
It was a good show. It was very interesting talking to some of these people.
Oh yeah. Well, there were guys. I mean, there were a guy named Fred Folk would drive from Durango. Was he in Durango? Yeah, he was in Durango. He would drive for 3 days to get to this show. I mean, he passed away too. So, but. It was just really interesting.
You mentioned Bill's shop in your presentation.
Yes.
I had a friend who used to refer to him as Butcher Shop for the way that he'd take a perfectly good locomotive and just completely disassemble it to make something else.
Well, I found that to be really interesting. I mean, Bill Shop did the left-handed shay. I mean,
Yeah.
he took one of the PFM shays and turned everything around and made a left-handed shay out of it.
Yeah.
And
Wait,
he would
left-handed
take,
shay? This is news to me. I thought all
yeah,
the
that's Bill
thought
Shop
all the
and
Sonoma banks were on the right side.
Right, yeah.
Oh, no, not just that. There's a whole fleet of left-handed shays in Taiwan. They built lots of left-handed shays.
I did not know that.
You're right. The Taiwanese shays would be left-handed. Now I
Yep.
feel stupid.
But are they all left-handed in Taiwan?
Everything with Anakine or something like that. Anashan Lumber Company
the
up on the
outside,
top of
yeah.
the mountain.
Yeah, but wait a minute. I didn't remember the of the HO version of the Alishan Shay. I think that's a right-hand Shay.
No, as far as I know, all the ones that were actually there were left-handed,
Oh, okay.
and the fireman and engineer were on opposite sides.
Yeah, well, we had that in the Chicago Northwestern too. So
Yeah, but oh yeah,
Yeah.
Frank. U.S. scalers will recognize Frank Titman. He didn't take brass. He would take American Flyer.
Oh, well,
and
yes,
turn
he
it
did.
into scale S.
Oh, yeah.
It totally did not resemble the original.
Oh no, and he also had a kit company. He made a couple of white metal kits in S scale.
Oh, I knew about Claude Wade. I didn't know that Frank did any kits.
Yeah, I think so. I think he did. Let me see if I remember it's funny because I can't remember stuff from day to day, but I remember this old stuff going back, and I can't remember that. I thought that Titman did a little tiny Suburban, like a 244, and then he did.
Oh, you're thinking about the Rex stuff.
Oh, was that
Paul? Did Titman do the originals on the Rex, or was that
I
somebody
think so.
else?
Yeah.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he did.
Well, who knows?
So
I have a very good friend of mine has one of likes S scale and has a few of those Rex models. They did the little B&O saddle tanker,
Mm-hmm.
if I remember correctly. Well, it's interesting.
I'm gonna try to take one of those Rexes and make it ON30.
You would.
It's a lot easier. I have a bunch of the Bachmann things, and I have converted all the Bachmanns to ON3, and I most of the time it's relatively okay to do it. It's pretty easy to do it on the rod engines because all you have to do is buy the axles from what's his name? Grantline made axle kits for the little 260 the 260 Mogul, and so I wound up buying a bunch of those, and I've been using that to make the changes. The two difficult ones were the Shay, and the Shay was very difficult, and the Heisler, because the Heisler had to be made because I had to make and cut the axles on a lathe. The Shay, I happened to wind up getting a Shay that the brothers, the Coronado Scale brothers, I forgot their the guys from the two brothers who are in who have Coronado Scale Hobbies in Phoenix. They did the conversions for the Bachmann Shay early on for the little two cylinder 2-truck Shay. So was fortunate to get one of those.
The Bachmann Climax is really easy to convert to
Really?
ON3.
Yeah, about the Bachmann Climax was great to convert. And I used the Climax a lot, but I cooked the gears on that, and I had to get a whole replacement gear set for that Bachmann Climax.
Really?
And I had to rebuild the gearbox. And there's about 4 gears or 5 gears in there. It's pretty complicated.
Yeah, it's not a gearbox for the weak-hearted, that's for sure. But
No,
none of those gearboxes are. They're all kind of complicated.
yeah, they're all. I mean, I wound up fixing I wound up fixing a Tower Engineering diesel that had. I don't know if you guys ever heard of Tower Engineering. It was an offshoot by Brian Marsh, and I don't think it was very financially successful for them. And it seems that Brian Marsh made a deal with Ajin of Korea to build competitors of the Kato engines and the MTH engines, like, you know, the AC 44,000s and stuff like that. But I mean, I wound up, a friend of mine gave me one that said, hey, here's an engine. The guy says it doesn't run, but you can hear things going on in the engine. And so I take it apart and I'm looking, and the motor shafts are running into the gearbox and nothing's happening at the wheels. So I look at the first gear. The first gear was, I have to tell you, I was shocked. The first gear was 1/8 of an inch in diameter. The main drive gear, made out of molded plastic, and it's on a little hub. And guess what? The hub had a crack in it, and the engine shaft just, nope, it's just spinning around in it. Now, nobody makes that part. Tower Engineering lasted all of about 6 months, I think. So, you know what I did? I got a piece of 1/8 inch tubing, turned it on a lathe so that I could press fit that over the hub and cut it off, and then just press fit the motor shaft into that hub, and it held. And so I did the same thing on both sides, and it works. But it's sometimes that they make things and they design things for the dollars and not for. We want to run things a long time. I mean, they tell you, you have you buy a decoder and it has a 90-day guarantee. I mean, I buy a decoder. It may take me 3 years before I use that decoder. So that's how it is. So any other questions?
Charlie, when you build a model,
Yes.
how do you know it's time to stop building that model and start another project?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I understand that question. If you notice the layout, there's a whole section of the layout that doesn't have any scenery on it, right? It doesn't have any ballast on it, doesn't have any trees, doesn't have the rocks, doesn't have the plaster and all. And so if I build a building or something like that, and it'll stay there, and it may not be finished with all the details. Now, if I really want to, if I finish something and I want it to be in an area that is already now finished, I tend to finish it. Okay, to the extent that I want to see something about the interior. Is the interior visible or not? Can I put some grass on it? Can I put some weeds? Can I weather it? Yeah, with enough details and enough weathering, and then I look comfortable. I take pictures of it, and I said, does that look real enough for me? And when I say, yeah, it looks real enough for me this time. Remember we dealt with reading from what was that fellow? Alan McClellan. Alan McClellan was the guy who had the big was it Virginian and Ohio Railroad?
Yeah.
And he started writing about good enough. And he was using Athearn locomotives and Athearn blue box cars, and he was painting them, and well, they're good enough for my layout. And we have to, in order to get to a point, you have to say, well, this is good enough. And then in the middle 80s, did you see when all of a sudden Katie started making boxcars, and they were making really good boxcars with really good details, and all of a sudden there was a paradigm shift between what was good enough and what is good enough today. And the same thing happens with brass models. And you look at some of the brass models that I have that date back to the late 1950s, they're crude. And then you look at one of these Overland models, or you look at that, any one of these. I just finished an RGS number 42, finished, painted it, decal, the sound, the whole thing, all the little lights, the marker lights, the whole bit, and you look at that detail and you say, wow, that's fantastic. And you sit there and the nice thing about the ON3 is the size, because when I do switching, I really do switching as realistically as possible. I mean, I'm coming up and I'm nudging the car with the coupler, and when that coupler clicks and mates, nothing moves. I mean, I could have a stove in the caboose, and that stove isn't tipping over. So that doesn't happen when you're doing an HO, and so I enjoy seeing that level of detail. So you will find buildings here that are finished, and there are some of them that they're done, but not done yet. I hope that answers your question. To some,
let me approach it from a little different standpoint. You talked about some of your models that you had judged for the achievement program.
right, yes.
Charlie, what's the difference in building a model that gets 80 points versus a model that gets 100?
Oh, come on, you know that. I mean, really. Yeah, let's go back here. Let me see if I can go back on some of these. I'll show you. Oh, it is. You see this one right there? This Lackawanna. That one got 80. I got an 80. Okay. And one of the things that the guys complained about was that they could see a little bit of the decal film on it. All right. And he said that the trucks weren't weathered enough. Okay. Now, when you look at those windows, how hard that is to get the windows in a styrene piece of, in a piece of styrene to look that good. Then I say, oh, I mean, really, you're gonna get me on, you're gonna ding me on that, or I don't know. It's tough. But when you look at this other one, no, it's not that one. This one. All right. Now this one, imagine this one. Now this one has every board that you see on the floor is a separate board, right? All right. And if you look at the main beams, the two main beams that run down the center, you see there's a panel that has 6 or 8 nut bolt washers in it. Those 6 or 8 nut bolt washers, that's when they were building that car. They built that car. There was a board here, a length of that board here, and another length here. So they sandwiched that together with these steel plates. All right. And if you look at up the side, you can see all of the nut bolts, NBWs for each of the slats. So yeah, that's what you need to have for over 100. Now,
beautiful modeling. Both of those that you showed.
Yeah, if you see at the bottom of if you look at the bottom of the main upright column, you see there's like a little thing. Okay, it looks like a little plate. Well, that plate is the plate that holds the truss rod that goes sideways, that goes across, and it has a little nut bolt washer that truss rod gets tightened up. Because nobody nailed this together. This is all bolted together and built under tension. So when I went through the process of building that, I tried to think of what it took to build that car and how they put it all together, how it is connected, because they didn't use glue, okay, and they didn't use nails, or they used nails for the boards, for the main, the floorboards. But you understand?
Charlie, what you're telling me, what you're showing everybody that's here tonight is the value, in my opinion, of the achievement program. Most people, when they build a model, don't go into thinking about how it was operated, why it was built the way it was, and go into the detail that you just went into to explain how you built that model and why you built it a certain way. To me, I call that the education that the achievement program provides. Thank you
Well,
so much.
it certainly does. Now, if you look at the bottom, you see that those boards are not painted. Well, the
Yeah.
Rio Grande did not paint the underneath of the cars.
Why?
They just didn't.
Why?
I don't know.
Waste of paint,
What?
a waste of paint.
It's a waste of paint because it got full up with grit and grime and everything else, and then they wash it down, and then it gets grit and grime. You look at the car today. You can walk along the line, and you can see rows of these cattle cars, these stock cars, and they don't look anything like this. This car looks like as if it was used maybe for 1 or 2 runs. It has weathering, but it isn't. I don't like the weathering that it's too profound.
Yeah.
That car's pristine compared to the one sitting there now.
Yeah, I know. I've seen them. I've got lots of photos of those puppies. But I needed photos of those because I wanted to see. That's interesting too, because that helped me get an idea as to how it gets put together. When you see the ones that how they're falling apart. So anyhow.
I've always thought about the achievement program, NMRA contest. You're not competing against the next guy on the table.
No, you're not.
You're competing against yourself.
Yeah, it's just like golf. You're competing against yourself.
I've never understood golf.
Yeah, I understand golf. I mean, I know I shouldn't say that because the good Lord of the golf is going to hear me say that.
Okay,
he's going to get me.
This is not model trains, but it's almost Yom Kippur. So I'll say this joke. Okay. There's this rabbi in Florida who just wants to golf every day, but it's Yom Kippur between services. And so he goes out to play golf, which you're not supposed to do.
Oh, yeah. Look out for lightning.
Well, the creator decided not to hit him with lightning. He had some angels up there with him in the throne room. And he's watch this. And they're like, huh? And so the guy hits a hole-in-one on the whole golf course.
Yes.
And they're like, how does that punish him? And God is just having a great laugh and says, yeah, but who can he tell?
Who can he tell? You can tell the Catholic priest, his buddy.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
I like that joke.
Yeah, that's true. It's like when you play golf with somebody and the ball goes shooting in your opponent's ball goes shooting into the woods and the guy goes, here, I found it, and you're standing on it.
I'm in a wheelchair, so I don't do golf, but my son does golf, sells golf balls.
Oh, really?
Yeah, him and his grandmother go out and find golf balls.
Oh, that's wonderful. It's a wonderful thing.
That was something we did when we were little, because I live by a golf course, not far from one. So when we would ride our 4-wheelers out, we'd ride out behind the golf course and just collect however many golf balls we could find.
Yeah, and then you can sell them $1 a piece.
We just collected them and we just gave them back to the golf course. Like, here, because you'd always, whenever you'd try to take a step somewhere, you'd step on one and then you'd like slip because it's sitting on a rock and you're like, oh, whoops.
Dylan, what do you model? I did not see any of your modeling things that you were doing.
So I am actually a manufacturer. I do ON30 locomotive kits.
Okay.
That's me primarily, because it's either you have time to put everything into the business or you have time for the modeling. And I've found that it's kind of difficult to have time for both. So I've kind of made the business my hobby, where I'm like, well, you know what? I can help these people with them because I know how they're supposed to go together. And that's basically my big thing is, the manufacturing. And that's what I
do custom painting and repairs. I do repairs and custom painting for 2 stores, one in New Jersey and one here in North Carolina. And I try to balance that between not to try to do too much because it gets to be overwhelming if you do too much of that. And the hot, then you get no fun. I try to turn on the trains at least once a day to turn a wheel. And I really enjoy the JMRI operations. I mean, and we've put operations together to my next door neighbor. He's got a little 4x8 layout, and we actually got JMRI operations running on his little layout. And then we have another friend of mine, Ed Regan from Regan Barkin Brewery. He has a big layout. His 60 by 30 HO layout, and with 200 box cars and freight cars, and 4 or 5 engines running at any one time. And we've done JMRI switch lists and manifests using that. And I just enjoy the whole everything that has to do with this hobby. And whether it's the nice thing is that one day, I mean, I can take a look at my shelf and say, well, do I feel like building a box car? Do I want to paint a locomotive? Do I want to put a DCC decoder in? Do I want to do this? Do I want to ballast track? No. Do I want to put some scenery? I can do all of those things, and it's all fun.
Charlie, do you write code for JMRI, or is it?
No, not at all. No. I wrote code in a long time, long ago, and I stopped writing code in 2004 when I worked for Phillips Van Heusen.
How do you use JMRI?
Oh, I use it. JMRI is. They have a thing called JMRI operations. Is anybody familiar with Decoder Pro?
Vaguely.
Okay. Well, Decoder Pro is another JMRI tool. All right. And what that does is that if you put you download JMRI onto your machine, and you put in your programming track, and you put this interface. It's a very small interface that you can buy from Digitrax, and you can interface between your computer and this programming track, and then it allows you. JMRI allows you to read the decoders, figure out what kind of decoder it is, and then change the CVs, all the little CVs on the decoders, and do all sorts of wonderful things. And they have different panels for each of the different decoders. So if I have a $40 Digitrax decoder on this diesel, I stick it on the track, and I say, okay, what kind of decoder is it? And JMRI Decoder Pro reads that decoder and says, oh, I'm a cheap Digitrax DS123, and I now can then go into the CVs, change whatever CVs I want it to change, whether it's the acceleration rate, the braking rate, the address, and all the things that it does. And the same thing goes for all of the complicated sound decoders. So if I put a Tsunami 2 steam decoder in, it'll tell me I got a Tsunami steam decoder, and now I can change the chuff rate, change the functions of the lights, and all that wonderful stuff. And it really works very, very, very straightforward. And and you can, whether you're using Digitrax or Tsunamis, TCSs, whatever you want to have, it works. And so JMRI also has this operations, and the operations you define the locations that you have on your layout, where the spurs are, what the contents of the spurs are, how many cars on each spur, what kind of cars can go to that spur, what you do with interchange tracks, what you do with yard tracks. So you define all the locations. Then you define all of the cars that you own. Then you define what routes do you want to run. I want to run from town A to town B to town C to town D and go to town E. And then I want to switch these industries in A, switch these industries in B, okay, and et cetera. You tell that route, and then you assign a route to a train, and you make a train. and then you set, and then you what they call build a train. And when you build a train, the system, the JMRI goes in and looks at all of the locations and looks at all of the cars, sees what cars can be picked up and what cars can be set out, and will actually at random pull all these cars and build you a what they call their manifest or their switching list. And the switching list says, okay, you're in town A, oh, go to this industry, pick up this car, and this car, and go to this yard track, pick up this car, and this car, and then start out. And you're starting out with 7 cars. And then you hit the town B. And at town B, it says, okay, I want you to set out these 2 cars, and then I want you to pick up these cars in town B. And then et cetera. It takes you all the way down the line. And so you get this beautiful switch list, just like a switch list you would get if you were a CSX engineer as to with your local freight. And it works. And it's a fun thing.
We use that on our ON30 module when we get together.
Oh, okay. Okay. Then you understand and you see how that works.
Oh, yeah.
And where are you from, Paul?
Graham, Washington.
Where, Washington?
Graham, 8 miles east, 10 miles south of Tacoma.
Oh, okay. Okay. Do they
Yeah,
have
one of those with the really bad weather right now.
We got all the smoke coming up from California and Oregon.
Oh yeah, that's tough stuff. That's really
you guys on the East Coast is going to get it in a few days.
Yeah, we got a hurricane coming tomorrow, so my golf game is out.
Well, you know, good luck on your cow pasture pool.
Thank you.
Charlie, Charlie, are you actively using this system right now, this JMRI?
Yes, absolutely.
How difficult was it to install?
I have to. I have a clinic on it, and I could do the clinic on how to install that. It's someplace in here. It is I think it's about a 25 or a 30 or 35 minute, 40-minute clinic on how to do JMRI installs.
Would you like to maybe come back sometime and do that for us and talk about how to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. I was very happy to do that.
That's great. I'll get with you later and we'll set up a time for you to do that. But
Sure.
let me ask you this. Paul, do you also use the JMRI system that Charlie's talking about?
One of our members does all that, and we just take the switch list, and when we set on our setups, we just switch the cars, and he generates all the switch lists.
Dylan, can you send Paul my email address? Paul, if you'll send me an email so that we can talk off later on. Charlie, I'd like to talk to you and Paul both about not just coming back on this show, but I'd like to write an article about the JMRI. And it sounds like you all can help me understand what on earth what we're dealing with, because I've never used a system like that before.
Mm-hmm.
I have heard of a system called Train Tracker. Have you heard of that?
I have not. I mean, I got into this JMRI relatively late, and so I didn't get into a lot of train tracking. I had been interested in train track stuff, tracking things back in the old days, and I would do it with. I would set up Excel spreadsheets with switch lists. But then that required a lot of manipulation. Here with JMRI, you don't have that manipulation, and me picking this up as opposed to working with cards. I mean, I'll take it any day.
Charlie?
Yeah.
Are you on a Mac or a PC?
Well, I started out with a PC, but I have the PC running the Dakota Pro in the layout room. But I have my JMRI on a Mac.
Yeah, because I know one of the differences with JMRI on a Mac, because JMRI stands for Java Model Railroad Interface.
That's correct.
Several programs.
Right.
there's what you're using. There's Panel Pro, which is a dispatching program,
Mhm.
Decoder Pro, all kinds of stuff.
Oh, yeah, there's automatic trains too.
Oh, I didn't know about that one.
Yeah,
There's one guy on MRH that's using the Wi-Fi connection to JMRI to host engineers even as far away as Australia.
Yeah, okay.
But I know that on a Mac, you got to make sure that the correct Java is loaded.
I got to tell you, it was a bear to load the Windows 10.
Windows 10 is terrible.
It was a bear, and with the Mac, it was like nothing. I mean, I just did it. It was there, you know.
Right.
I loaded JMRI, and then it said, do I want to have help? And I needed to load this, and I hit the load. I said fine, and then it said, yeah, what's it? That little, what is it? That some kind of helper comes up, and it says,
Yeah. You gotta that loads the Java runtime and
yeah, right, yeah,
whatever else the Mac specific stuff in our case.
Yeah.
And if you're on Windows, it loads the Windows specific stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Because it all runs on Java.
Yeah.
So see, I got to tell you guys, I have no idea what you're talking about, and in the other people, when I
educate you,
when I try to write article, when I try to understand this, the concept of computerization in model railroad, everybody that seems to know what they're doing talks a language that is so Greek to me that in 5 minutes I am so lost in the forest I can't see a tree. And,
yeah,
and it's so frustrating that I really think so many people are not even trying the technology because of that.
Yeah.
If we can find a way to try to simplify the terms that we're using and assume that nobody has any idea about how to work a computer other than press a button here and there, then I think we can get somewhere. But when people start talking about JMRI and programming and this and that and Java and this and that and blueberries and strawberries and
raspberry,
raspberry Pis, yeah.
And then all of a sudden, I say, well, my eyes roll over and I say, well, forget this.
I don't know. In the photo
MRH about it does. I don't think they do JMRI yet, but they talk about DCC every month.
Mm-hmm.
And the same kind of thing. Some of the decoders are conceived and orchestrated by guys who are very technical. And they don't do anything to try to equate that to terms that, for instance, Paul or Peter or John or Derry or whoever can get, okay? Like if you talk about JMRI and then you start talking about Java, they have no clue what you're talking about. Mm-hmm. They don't even know that JMRI includes the word Java. So like you say, Jim, you've got to give them the foundational materials so that you're speaking the same language.
And it's just not out there. I keep looking, and people send me emails, and I read the first sentence or so, and I think, well, geez, I'm lost already. Where do I go from here? And trying to ask people questions about it, it's difficult to even know what questions to ask sometimes because they're talking in language that I've never used, that I have no idea how to use.
Well, Jim, do you use DCC?
No. Let me tell you what I use. I have a trolley layout. I have World War II rheostats. I have diodes. I have on-off switch. Mm-hmm. I have little blue boxes. And I wire all that stuff together in my little blue box. And in the trolleys I build, I put in this trolley, if it's Monday, they get the forward diode. If it's Wednesday, they get the backward diode. so that in any time I can run 2 trolleys with a controller, 1 in each hand, and I'm a happy camper.
Mhm.
I have
Yeah.
never gone past that technology on my model railroad.
Mhm.
I had a guy in Australia send me an email and say, do you computerize your operation? And I wrote back and I said, this is how I operate. And he said, well, turn in your MMR, because if you don't understand computerization of the model railroading today, you shouldn't have an MMR.
Don't
Well,
give me a break.
and that struck a chord with me. And I thought, well, let me try to look into what on earth he's talking about.
Well,
Okay.
there needs to be another category on that, because where we have the 11 categories, electrical is when you look at electrical, because I got the electrical, all right, and when they said you run 2 trains at once, I mean, for me to run 2 trains at once is nothing. It's DCC. I mean, I don't have to worry about that, right? But I
You
mean,
can run 140 trains at once.
yeah, okay, anytime you want, right? Now, so they don't make any distinction between that and the old block systems that they have for, because what Jim is talking about is basically a block system, but he has it picked up with the diodes in the pickups, all right? And I mean, maybe they need to put a category in for electronics.
Well, I'm not sure they need another category. I think they may need to do something with the electrical part of it. I've got every one of the certificates. I got all 11 of them. But when I got them, we weren't talking this language. I got mine. I'm number 202. So I got mine in the 80s. And back then, this stuff, nobody was thinking about doing this kind of computerization to their
Well,
model.
yeah, they were working on it. I mean, because I had a friend of mine, they were working on this when Scintilla came out with the Aztrek.
Yeah, GE. Yeah.
The GE was, it was a
Yeah.
GE Aztrek. That was the first touch, all right? And then PFM came out with the analog sound. I mean,
Yeah.
if anybody has anybody heard the analog sound from PFM?
Yeah, I have.
Spectacular for steam.
It's you can't beat it.
Well, yes, you can. You can beat it. You can beat it with it. You can beat it, but because the bell was horrendous.
Okay, but I'm talking about the steam sounds.
The steam sound is spectacular, and the whistle sounds were great. But you didn't have.
Part of it's the speaker. Part of it's the speaker. You can't get that big a speaker inside a locomotive.
Well, that's the problem. That's the issue with when you have ON3, you have a little bit of room. Okay,
compared to SN2,
the end is like the tender is like 2 inches wide. You should see the speaker I have in a Sunset C16. I mean, I have a speaker that's 1 3/4 inches. I mean, it sounds like woof, And if you get a decent enough decoder, it can push those speakers. So but the PFM sound started coming out in 72?
When did Bruce Chubb write his first article?
Bruce Chubb, I think he was in 78, something.
70, late 70s, yeah.
Late 70s.
But you had to wire wrap and build all the little boards and then install them in a computer or somewhere on your layout, as may be. Yeah. It was a lot of work.
Well, yeah,
and you had to understand.
I got into sound. I got into PFM sound in 78. All right.
And you had to be a computer programmer and understand BASIC to do Chubb stuff.
Basic,
yeah, but I never. That was the CMRI, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Railroad Model Interface.
Computer Model Railroad Interface. There's actually a module for JMRI to connect to CMRI.
Yeah.
Although it's much more with that interface. You don't have to do the programming, Jim, like you did way back in the day. No. And
Well,
The
what I,
cards
well,
now, you don't have to build them, you can buy them.
here's what I have found, and this best I could tell, this is state of the art. There is a computer program by a German company called Freewald, FREIWALD software. And there is a computer program called Train Tracker.
Mhm.
And it's done by a company out west. And if you combine those two off-the-shelf computer programs, no programming skill, they simply ask you questions, you fill in the answer.
Yeah.
And
The MRI is the same way. You don't
The
have
MRI is
to
the same
do
way.
program.
Exactly.
Somebody else has already done the programming. The
I-
problem is,
I have never found anybody with using JMRI that has told me that. Everybody that I have talked to about using JMRI talks about, well, it won't do this. I got to program it to do that. No one tells me that JMRI is an off-the-shelf, just load it into your computer and it automatically tells you what information needs to operate the program. The programs that I'm talking about will allow you not only to develop switch lists, it'll actually operate the trains. You can sit in your chair and have a beer. This program will actually operate the trains, not just one, not just two, any number you want to at one time. You never have to touch anything. You press the computer to start it, and it takes over the total operation of your railroad. I don't think JMRI will do that.
yes,
No,
it will.
Thank God for that.
Well,
Yeah,
you know
okay.
what you have to do. Hold on, but what you really have to do, and I'm sure that this goes with this other one too, is that you have to tell it where your tracks are.
Yep, you have
the
to do that.
tracks
You have-
are. You've
you
got to
have to
tell
do-
it where your cars are. You got to
Yep.
tell it about your locomotives. You got to
Yep.
tell it how the switches work.
All the same, exactly. You got to do the same thing for the programs I'm talking about. You do,
Yeah.
they load all of that information in.
Yeah, you have to load that up. That's what you have to do in JMRI. Now, I mean, in locations, and when you look at a JMRI location, because that's the first thing that you do, and in the location you have a town, so you put the town in. But then it asks you, are there any industrial spurs in that town? So you put this. Yeah, I have one industrial spur. Then it asks you to
Right.
load, does that spur have an industry? So you'll have to load the industry. Now, then it asks you, what kind of cars does this industry take? How often? What cars don't you want? And you have to answer all those questions. And if you have 50 industries, okay, it might take you a long time to do the load. If you have 300 cars, think about that. It'll take you a
Takes a
long
while to
time
load
to
it.
do that too.
Yeah, the problem is, Jim, that I think you're getting confused by terminology, and that's part of what you're talking about. When someone's talking DCC or JMRA, they say you got to program it. They're not talking about writing code. They're talking about setting the variables like he's talking about, the name of the town, where the sidings are, how many cars they hold. That's all variables that you basically fill in the blank, okay? The problem is JMRI is open source. It's written, the program itself is programmed by geeks. Everybody knows what a geek is. And they don't translate that well. There is no manual, so to speak. There's a help page and what they call a manual file, but it's all written for more geeks. It's not written for Joe Blow.
Mm-hmm.
And so to get in the nitty gritty and find out what it can really do, you almost have to talk to the guy that wrote the code and say, well, can I do this? Oh, yeah. It's simple. You just click this button here. But it's not set up as well. The user interface is not set up as well.
No, the problem is that the guys who there was a guy who was involved in writing the location interface, and then there was another fellow who had written the interface for the cars, and another one that interfaced with the routes, and another one interfaced with the trains. And
somebody else wrote the background for it.
And everybody else wrote the background, and then you try to read the user manuals online. You can sit there and you go, oh, what the hell does he mean? I have yet to learn how to schedule that. Okay.
Guys, let me introduce myself. My name's Clark Cooning. I'm MMR 225.
Okay.
I have been the vice president of the NMRA. I've done a lot of things in the NMRA. I am the guy who started modeling in the masters for the NMRA.
Okay.
Some of your comments are like way out there. Some comments are very, very true. I've been using JMRI, and when you say JMRI, it encompasses, as somebody else said, about 6 different products. If you're looking at operations for the switch list, and let's just call it the switch list, if you download their manual and kind of follow it, don't, when you do it the first time, build it for like something very simple. Draw a little track plan on a piece of paper and just build it to that. And you will automatically see how it builds the cars. And once you understand it, it goes very straightforward. I've been using it for years on an SN3 layout, an ON or a HON3 layout, and now a big HO layout. And it's very straightforward. If you read the manual, there are, Jim, you said you haven't found, there's a guy, I forget his name, who has a whole series of videos on YouTube on how to use JMRI, and he takes you through each screen, and it's very straightforward. And I won't say he kind of gets a little confused in a couple spots, because I think if he did it again, he would know a little bit more about it. But it's not a bad beginner spot if you've never used it. Now, when it comes to the programming, as somebody else has said, that's a whole different story. That's getting into the decoders and the DCC. And as far as MMRs, older MMRs who were not, this stuff was not available to, you're right. It's maybe even past some of them. But there's a lot of older MMRs who have become geeks, and I am certainly not a geek, but I've certainly tried to learn, especially fooling around with Arduinos and so forth and doing DCC. But I think it's available to everybody, but it's like anything else. You got to spend a little effort. It's just like getting your MMR. You can't just walk in and do it. You have to put a little practice and effort into it, and you'll be able to understand all this.
Clark, I really appreciate you saying these kind of things, because when I started looking into it, as I said, it's just so confusing to a newbie like me. And I don't care how much model railroad experience you may have. You start talking to the people and it's Greek. I mean, there's got to be a better way of trying to communicate what the technology can do and how people who aren't geeks, I don't care how old they are, who just don't have the knowledge and aren't interested in gaining that knowledge, how they can use this technology.
I think you have to learn a little bit about it. It's sort of like model railroading. You have to become a bit of an architect to figure out what you're going to build. You got to be able to be a bit of a wood shop guy to build a bench work. And then you got to become a little bit of an electrician to wire the track. So you have to be a little bit of everything. And getting into electronics is the same thing. So I don't think you have to understand that, the binary code of anything. But I think if you understand, okay, if I use this module, it will produce this for me.
That I can understand totally. I was not aware, and no one except some people tonight on this show have ever told me that it's an off-the-shelf kind of module.
Yeah, for the most part it is. I lived in the Toronto area before I retired, and now I live in the boonies of Northern Ontario. Most people move south. I moved 7 hours north. I live on top of Lake Huron, and I live in a little community that actually has a model railroad club. I have a guy who is 80 years old, and when I tried to get them into going to DCC for the club layout, this guy folded his arms, like what's the puppet's name, and looked at me and said, "Are you kidding?" And now, believe it or not, he is our DCC install expert on locomotives.
It just, you had to get him, see, what was that? There's this young guy in college and he needs a summer job, and he's from the city. And he little college town, he finally finds a job with a farmer at the edge of town. So gets there the first day, and the farmer says, "Well, we got to get the mule out of the barn and get him, so we can get it hooked up." And the farmer's in there and has a cup of coffee, and all of a sudden the mule is nowhere to be seen. And he goes out there, and this guy's pulling on the mule, just pulling like he can. Oh, and the farmer goes over in the corner of the stall, gets this beat to living daylights 2x4, goes up behind the mule and whacks the mule right across the back of the head. The mule goes like this and just and gets up and gets out of the stall. And he said, "Son, sometimes you have to get the mule's attention."
Yes. Well, this fella, and today, like, honestly, all the guys go to him and go, "Hey, can you put a decoder in this engine?" He says, "Oh, it's Wednesday. Have you got the decoder?" "Yeah." "Okay, see me tomorrow by 3. And he was so like, he told me when I first moved, he says, "I've got an NCE power cab and I've never hooked it up because it's too hard." I went, "What?" So I went over to his home. I said, "Okay, take off the 2 wires from your power pack." He's okay. I said, "Hook it up here." He goes, "Okay." I said, "Okay, plug that thing over there, plug that in there. And here's the 2 decoder engines." And we put them on a track, and I brought another throttle and we played trains. And he goes, "Are you kidding me? Why the hell didn't I do this?" And he says, "I guess it's all about taking the first step and not being scared." And I think that goes for a lot of things in life. And you have to take that first step and go, "Okay, I'm going to try it." I remember going to the Madison convention in Wisconsin one year, and this guy in a hobby shop had 2 SN3 brass locomotives, and they were just in pieces. And it was just a disaster. And the guy made me a deal, and I brought him home, and I made 1 engine out of it. And it took me a while to figure it out. And I happen to have a fella here in the Toronto area who, some of you, if you're an O-scale guy, would know him. Well, there are a bunch of guys that I know with the Maple Leaf Mafia, Lex Parker and Jerry Cornwell, who used to own Mount Albert Scale Lumber, and another fella. And this guy he could scratch build 0-3 locomotives just fantastic. So I showed him what I was doing. He goes, "Oh," he says, "give that to me for a week." He says, I think you need a little fix here." Anyway, it ended up, I paid something like $500 for the 2 locomotives. And when I sort of got out of SN3, I sold that locomotive for almost $1,700.
Oh, God. You don't know Trevor Marshall, do you?
Oh, yes, I know Trevor very well.
What about Keith Stamper?
I know Keith very well.
Yes.
Yeah, they're all in the same. They're all in the same group. Yep. So when I built my SN3 layout, those guys would come over and they would run trains, and they kept measuring. I said, "What are you guys measuring?" "Well, if we just widen out the little track a little bit, you could get the king of scales on Hero N3." But
yeah, that Trevor was doing ON2 back then, I guess.
Yeah. Well, right now he's doing S scale.
Yeah.
There's a group in the Toronto area made out of Pete Moffat, who used to be the chair of the AP program. Trevor, a fellow named Klubines, and another guy, Martin, And they have a big S scale module group that is.
Yeah, they got a Fremo group. Yeah, I do S, and so I somebody made a CN switch stand on Shapeways, and I sent the link to Trevor, and he says, "But I've already done all my switch stands. Couldn't you have sent this to me 3 years ago?" Of course, it didn't exist 3 years ago, but yeah.
Well, see, now there's another example, Jim. Look at where we are in 3D printing. You talk about geeking out. And all the things that can be done in 3D printing. But it's like anything else. You got to be able to, the computer is only a tool. You have to understand how to get the information in that computer so that the tool can tell the other tool, i.e. the 3D printer, what to do.
Yeah, a lot of people, they see these commercial programs that are like, $30,000, $100,000, and they freak out. Oh, I can't do that. Well, you don't need to.
No.
Just go download Tinkercad or what's the name of it? Starts with an S. I can't think of it now. Chip uses it, Paul. I can't think of the name of it. Huh?
No,
No. Shapeways is a commercial printer.
I apologize. Wrong.
But
anyway, these programs are free. They're a lot more intuitive. You can even start your first model or two just by putting shapes together, like we used to do with Legos.
Yeah.
And eventually, you learn how to do things, and you put it on a USB stick and you stick it in your cheap little 3D printer, and bingo, you have a detail part or a whole locomotive.
Well, the other thing that's coming, I mean, even the commercial Cricut you can buy at Michael's or other craft stores. You can build basically use it as it's not a laser cutter, but it will cut out stuff. And Miles Hale has done some really cool clinics on that. But there is some fantastic stuff. One of my best friends is Tim Wares, who owns Fast Tracks, and now he owns Mount Albert Scale Lumber as well. And if you look at the stuff that he does and some of the kits that they're doing, and then it's just amazing what you can do with technology.
Yeah. Clark, this is Jim Kello again.
Yep.
Dylan, if you will share my email with Clark. Clark, if you could send me an email so we could talk later. Sure. I'd really like to try to get you and Charlie and Paul together and see if I can't figure out a way of writing an article about this JMRI and profiling you three guys in it, because I've got an article coming at the end of this month on the Freewall program. And the people that I talked to about that program, I promise you, I've got 2 examples of how that program will operate in the front of the article. And it took 5 minutes for them to tell me about what they did to get to that point by using that off-the-shelf software. And I understood immediately what they were talking about. And there was no question in my mind that if I wanted to, I could buy that software, install it on my computer, and get it operating within a short period of time, exactly like they were talking that it would do. So that's what I would love to be able to try to do with JMRI, because JMRI, and I forget some of the other comments. I remember the cherry pie, was it, or something? I remember.
Raspberry Pi is a little bitty single board computer, about the size of a credit card.
So people started talking about that with JMMR, and then they started talking about not Altoids. I forget what it's some kind. It starts with an A. I forget, Android or something like that.
Arduinos.
Arduino, yeah.
So then here we go with Arduinos, and by the time I got through with the cherries and the Arduinos and different things here, and then you got to go here, and it just I couldn't understand what they were saying. I guess it's part of my problem.
Yeah, well,
So-
you have to leave Arduinos out of that conversation with JMRI and Raspberry Pis and all this other stuff, because those and Androids out, because those are only vehicles to run the software. What you want to
Yeah.
first understand is that where that software is and how it works.
But
The
and
nice thing about,
I guess part of my problem is the people that I have found so far maybe are trying to so impress me with their knowledge about the technology that what they don't understand is I'm just totally lost. I've got no idea what they're even saying to me.
the
All
JMRI runs on Java.
I posted in the chat a YouTube location for the real simple operations thing on JMRI done by some guy in his house. And if you follow his YouTubes, you'll get a really basic understanding of the operations in JMRI or the switch.
What's his name? Where would I try to find him?
In the chat.
Look in the chat, there's a link, Jim.
Oh, okay, thank you. You got that, Dylan, right?
Yes, I do.
Thanks.
See, JMRI, because it runs on Java, it'll run on Linux, it'll run on Mac, it'll run on Windows, and probably other stuff that we don't know about.
And I assume they're computers, right?
That computer operating system, not the computer.
That's my email on the bottom of that one as well.
Those are operating systems like Windows. So it'll run on those, which means it'll run on almost any PC anybody owns, regardless of anything else.
I got you.
And there's quirks on the install, but the owner of the computer ought to understand that. As far as the Raspberry Pi goes, there's actually a guy that sells all of it ready to run. It's on a little memory card, and you just plug it in and plug in the computer, and it all works. You don't have to set anything. You don't have to install it even. I'll find that for you.
Okay.
But the thing is, yeah, that's like anything else. If you run Linux, you can do all the other. If you run Mac, you can install this.
See, I don't.
But
I run an iPad and an iPhone.
It'll actually run on your iPad.
Yeah,
it will run on your iPad.
How do you print it? How do you print it from the iPad? You go to you air print?
AirPrint, and my son installed that for me. So I either from my iPhone or my iPad, I can do a print function, and it says AirPrint, and it recognizes the printer I've got. So I press yes and print, and it prints it out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, for you, the Raspberry Pi would be perfect because you can set it up as a computer. Okay. You don't have to have a monitor and keyboard on it. Use your iPad. And it can run JMRI on your system, and you don't even have to have your iPad connected. But JMRI will run on your iPad. You have to jump through some hoops, but it'll work. But the thing is, that's not the important part. The important part is how it operates, like the stuff you've had the last couple meetings about. Put a switch here, fill in the blank, name this one, and fill all that out, and it'll run your railroad. Is it as easy necessarily as the commercial product? No, I don't think it's as polished. But it also doesn't cost $900.
That's the reason, TC, I want to write about it. Because it's one thing to write about an off-the-shelf $900 computer program that has all the bells and whistles and it's easy, and it's for somebody like me who can understand it. Now, will I ever buy it? No. Why? I don't want it. I don't even have DCC. I'm a happy camper with what I got right now. So I'm a throwback, I guess, in that regard.
Yeah, we got a guy on the SCAL list we call String Bob.
Yeah,
He's like, everything's old-fashioned.
Well, but I don't mean for it to be. I'm just used to it. I love to do it. And my interest right now is more building a specific model, than anything else. But I'm interested in the technology because I'm trying to, I guess, keep up with what's happening in the hobby and bring people to the shows like this that are really interesting to talk to and can provide us real information. That's why I'd love to be able to write about the JMRI, but until tonight, I haven't found people that I can communicate with.
I think you didn't ask me the right question last time. And like I say, don't get confused by the word programming. It's like when people talk about programming their DCC decoder. They're not writing code. They're setting options. They're changing a couple of CV options. And
you're right, Bill. It's not as complicated as what people make, but like Jim, you have to introduce them to that. If you just say, like most people, if you ever talk to the guys at, oh my God, at Digitrax.
Oh God.
You need to be a electronics PhD. Whereas if you really want to talk somebody simple and they will talk to you in your language, you go to NCE and those guys just talk to you like, well, push this button, it'll work. Oh, okay, I can do that.
Well, it's a matter of language. When I was doing tech writing, you talk to the engineer that designed the doodad, and your eyes glaze over after the first paragraph.
That's
You're
correct.
Lost.
The hardest thing to do is a technical how to written thing. It's like, how do you start a car? Jim, how would you start a car?
Put the key in the ignition.
Well, how do I get into the car to do that?
Open the door.
Oh, but you didn't tell me that.
I assumed you were already inside.
No, see, you can't assume. Just as I say, if I say to you, well, put the DCC locomotive on the track. Well, I haven't got DCC in my locomotive. Oh.
See, this is when my eyes start rolling over.
Exactly. That's why you have to, this is why you have to find out the level. When I teach mine with the masters, I find out the lowest level of skill and I start there.
Lowest common denominator.
See, Clark, that would be me, and you'd be right on point.
Now, I posted in the chat this Arduino guy. His name is Phil McWhorter. He was a teacher. I have never done anything with Arduinos. A guy put me onto this guy. I had my Arduino. He showed me to plug it into the computer. Oh, look, it came on. He showed me this little file. I plugged that in. Christ, it went right to the Arduino. Look at that. And then all of a sudden I had a blinking light. Holy Christ, I'm a miracle worker.
Well,
Clark, what you're saying right now is exactly why what this hobby needs is more mentors like that who will help modelers who need the help and show them the easiest ways to do things.
Well, that's why I developed Modeling with the Masters almost 30 years ago today.
It was that long ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, we would have guys come into the class. I had one guy sat in front of a laser kit box. I said, "What's the matter?" He says, "I don't know how to open the box." Don't laugh. So we helped him. We got today the guy. I've seen his recent works, and the guy's a fantastic builder of structures. But you have to bring that new guy along. It's so important for a hobby. Whether you're an older guy, a young guy who's just starting out in the hobby, we need to be able to say, hey, come on, I'm going to show you it's not that hard.
Clark, that's exactly why I've been writing my new tracks articles for the last 3 years. That's exactly why I started these Zoom meetings twice a week. And that's exactly why I started the Zoom train show, the first one being this Saturday afternoon. Because what's happened is a lot of modelers, model railroaders, I don't care how old they are or how long they've been in the hobby, they're really loners. That part hasn't changed in this hobby, in my opinion. And they are embarrassed or scared or whatever word you want to use to come up to a Clark, to anybody and say, gee, I saw that model and that was really great. Can you help me build that model? They just aren't doing it. So you need to be able somehow to present the modelers that have the knowledge, that have the talent, that are willing to help other people, and then expose the people who really need the help to those modelers. You've got to find a way to bring them together. And until we can find better ways to bring them together, I think that's part of the detriment of the hobby right now.
Well,
I think a lot of people would get their model railroads more computerized if there were mentors that they thought they could call and be able to talk to and understand what they were telling them.
Well, I think
go ahead.
Sorry, I think there's people like you, though, that are very happy and the enjoyment comes from what they're doing. They don't necessarily have to go to total computerization. Maybe their next step is just to get to DCC in order to run a few more trains. Now, it's not for you.
Clark, I agree 100%, but whether it's computerization, starting with DCC, or just building your first model kit, the same principle applies.
Oh.
They need a mentor that they can go to for help, at least to start out.
I agree, but they don't have to go from rheostatin diodes, I'm sorry, I'm laughing, to a totally computer run layout. That's maybe not their interest. You have to find out what their interest is and work with them in each step to get to where they want to go.
I agree.
Sorry, Al, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
Well, the two examples, and then I want to ask you a question, Jim. We're talking about JMRI or Arduinos, and we're talking about DCC. It's not just the dollar signs or the knowledge. It's either or both. Like, I really don't have the money, being on a super fixed income, to go out and buy a DCC system, but I can build one with a couple of Arduinos. But that brings up a question and a question. You go back, you got to have the basic building blocks. What the hell is an Arduino to begin with? And how do I get the DCC loaded, get the motor controller working and everything, plug it onto my layout? It's all steps. And every single one's a slight learning curve. Now, could you use a show or 10 on this is an Arduino, or this is a Raspberry Pi, or this is JMRI, and how you get it onto your computer? That's one show. How do you get the darn thing installed so you can then learn how to do the, say, Decoder Pro? Okay, I work for Paul and some other guys. I install decoders for them. I've got decoder programmers, like for ESU. I can change sounds and do all kinds of things. But if all you want to do is get the computer to run at the speed you want it to with this other thing, you don't need those programmers. All you need is Decoder Pro, and doing it. You can do it with just your handheld device and punch in a bunch of numbers one at a time. But why?
Yes, why?
Why? Because you're not going to remember all those numbers, and if you make one mistake, your decoder is screwed, and you got to do a factory reset and start over.
Well, you have to watch what you say there, Bill. Don't say they're screwed, because
No, I said the decoder was screwed.
Well,
Not the
but
decoder.
people who are not familiar with that think it's I just blew $40.
Oh, no. I didn't say it was toast. I just said it was screwed up.
But that goes to what Jim said. It's like going to your local NMRA. Well, there's the NMRA, then there's the Mid-Continent, and it's MCOR, or in my case, the NFR, and then I belong to the COD. Well, what the hell does that all mean?
Well, COV is your division, which is your local meetings.
Right, but do you know what it stands for? It stands for the Central Ontario Division.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. And that's why I say us in model railroading, if you've been in it for some time, you talk geek, just as electronics guys talk geek. You have to bring it down to that brand new guy who knows nothing and go, okay, when they start talking Greek, I will translate for you.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at. How useful, Jim, would it be to have a show that takes a subject, whether it's DCC or NMRA, weird words, and just breaks it all down into actual English?
But if you've seen the shows, that's exactly what I've been trying to do. That's why I took, last time, that's why I asked the museum people to be here, because I wanted to try to give an example of here is a museum that bought this program and got it operational, and this is how they did it. And then he sat here that last time and he talked to you about exactly how they did it and what it took for them to do it. And I think that was interesting because for me, at least, it brought the possibilities of computerizing a model railroading to life. And I had never heard anybody talk about it like that before. I had never seen them demonstrate it on the model railroad like he did last time before. So to me, that's what I'm trying to do, TC. That's what I'm trying to do tonight with Charlie. That's why when Charlie started talking about JMRI, I knew that that was a subject that I had been desperately trying to talk about. And frankly, I'm using Charlie now as a way to try to introduce that. Because while I've done 2 programs, the one with the guy from Australia that uses that software, and he told you why he does it and so forth, and the size of his layout, and how he got it installed, and how many years he's been working with it. Now you've heard from the museum. I have one other person scheduled, Chris Oliver, who uses the software. And Chris is the one that got it installed for the museum, but he also has it installed on his home layout. And his home layout is just unbelievable. It's 5 levels.
Oh my gosh.
Huge. It's huge. You see the length of some of the trains that he runs on his layout using this system. It's unbelievable to me. Now, what I would love to do is I'd like to find the person that I could bring into the shows and do a show on DCC or whatever that part of the programs are that can create sounds, that can change the numbers, and I'd love to do a show about this is how it's done. And it's not rocket science. Anybody can learn to do it. I haven't
Well, it's
found
just like if you
I
are
haven't
using,
found the person, TC, maybe you're that person. I haven't found the person that can come onto the show and talk about the kind of things that you're starting to talk about now. The reason I'm trying to do first an article about the JMRI, I got to try to make sure I understand what I'm talking about. I understand what I'm talking about when I talk about the freewall software. I truly believe I understand that. I don't understand JMRI yet. That's why I'm trying to talk to Clark, I'm trying to talk to Charlie, and I'm trying to learn. And then, yes, I'd love to bring the people in once I think I understand it and have them talk about it and try to make sure other people are at least exposed to it. Is it for everybody? No.
Of course not.
Is it something that you hear about in the model press, that you see written about in the model press? Is it something that is, when's the last time you talked to somebody like this about this subject? And that's what I'm trying to bring to the shows here. Not just on computerization. That's why we've had people on various subjects, how to build a module. If you go back and you look at the people that we've had here and the subjects that we've tried to talk about, it's all about model building and trying to improve skills and trying to get people up to a higher skill level than maybe when they started watching the shows. That's the goal. And hopefully trying to link people with the people that need help to the people that are on the show who can possibly be the mentors for them and answer their questions. That's what this is all about, TC.
Well, that's what you've done a lot with your articles. I haven't been able to watch a lot of the shows. A bunch of stuff's going on with my HOA. I'm on the board of that and I got to mess with it. But the, everybody remember the Athearn Blue Box kit?
No,
They call them shake the box kits.
I remember the Ambroid 1 of 5,000 kits.
And a little more complicated than what I'm talking about.
I remember the Campbell kits.
Yeah, those are a step beyond what I'm talking about. The Athearn kit was really, you took out the plastic shell, you clipped in the floor and clipped on the doors, screwed on the trucks and laid on the layout. And a lot of people are at that level and they don't understand that, yeah, but you can do this or that. You can add details. You can really make that look good. But like you say, they've never been exposed to that level of modeling and seen that, oh, that's not that hard. I can do that.
That's why I asked Charlie.
But Bill, why would you do that today? Why would you? It's like buying an Athearn engine in the day, putting in Canada, they're about $40, not like 25 in the States.
Yeah.
And then you're going to put $60 worth of brass detail parts on and stuff. When
I used to cut out the radiators for, so
when I can go
a brass
buy
detail part to put in.
When I can go buy a scale trains or a Rapido locomotive that is state of the art, and you put it on the track and it runs like a Cadillac. Why would I do that? There's points in this hobby where you have to go, okay, where am I going to put my time and money and effort? And locomotives ain't one of them in detailing.
Well, some people do it because they can't afford $300 for a scale trains.
Yeah.
Where they can afford $20 or in your case, 40 Canadian and get the Athearn and buy a couple of detail parts this month and a couple more in a couple months. And in a year, they've got the equivalent as far as looks. Still runs like crap, but.
Well, that's my point. Like I see these guys buying on YouTube or on eBay, they buy all these crappy locomotives. I got 30 locomotives I paid $20 a piece for. Oh my God, sir. Go out and buy something half decent for $250 and you know, you won't be banging the table. It'll run beautifully. Like that mentality just escapes me. But anyway, that's me.
People don't understand saving up until you got enough to buy something. They want something right now.
Well, I agree with.
Guys, not to cut anything off. Usually we go to about 9 o'clock and well, it's almost 9:30.
All right.
It's only 1826.
I'm sorry. I'm afraid I'm the fault here. I really I'm sorry. And Charlie, I'm sorry if I got off track here with you a little bit, but I sure didn't mean to. And I can't thank you enough, Charlie, for coming tonight and talking about it. And I do want you to come back. And I do want you to talk about actually doing this JMRI and creating your switch list and how you use this. I'm serious about that.
Right.
And
Well,
I'll contact you.
As I said, I have 2 clinics that I did for the local CPD for our local division. And one of them is on Dakota Pro, how to use Dakota Pro. And I did that with a hands-on clinic. And then I did another clinic a couple of months later on JMRI, how you get started with it and how does it roll? How do you get rolling with it? So I'd be happy to share those things with you and we can do something on it.
Oh,
And it's simple stuff. It's just not really, it's not rocket science stuff. I mean, this is all
well,
down
maybe,
to a simple level.
maybe we take it a step at a time. That works fine for me, but I just got to make sure that it's understandable, Charlie. That's where I'm coming from. Clark, I'll say one thing to you. You're modeling with the masters. I really admire you for starting that program, staying with it all those years, and making it as successful as it was. I don't know whether you remember this or not, but you and I met at a convention. I was the AP chairman, the regional AP chairman at that convention. And we talked about me being part of your program and talking about how to build in brass. And I told you that I would think about it, and I never got back to you because, very frankly, I couldn't figure out how I could do something for one of your modeling with the masters programs that would be worth a darn for many people. So I appreciate you asking, but I probably should have gotten back with you a long time ago and told you that. But I really admire you for doing the programs that I think they've really been helpful for the NMRA.
Well, thank you. Yeah, we've had fantastic response to it over the years. I forget, I tallied up how many people have actually taken it, and it's quite a large number. But now Jim Gore is taking it over, and he's another fantastic MMR, and he's going to do very well with the program. So I'm quite happy to let him take over after almost 30 years, and I can actually get to work on my layout in the winter and fishing in the summer.
Fantastic. Well, lesson for next next.
Put you in touch with our guru on our ON30 group. He knows a lot more about JMRI than I do.
Well, if you'll just put me in touch with him, I'll contact him too.
I can do that.
That would be great. Next Saturday, we're hosting the live train show at 1 o'clock Eastern time, Saturday afternoon. We've got some fantastic manufacturers that are going to be in that show, most of which I doubt many of you have heard of before. I've intentionally only gotten what I consider to be mom and pop companies that have been invited. And I'm telling you, the creativity that some of these people are showing and the products that they're bringing to the market, I really hope that you'll take some time and consider coming and joining us. It's going to be live streamed on our YouTube channel, the New Tracks YouTube channel archive, and on Zoom. So I hope that all of you will be able to attend and tell your friends about us. That's in the afternoon. That evening at 7 p.m., we have our normal Saturday evening Zoom program. And on that program, we've got Bob Keelan, who's going to talk to us about the O-Scale National Convention in Denver in June of 2021. He's going to give us an update and talk about what they're planning to do and the kind of layouts that they're featuring in that convention. Dylan is going to talk to us about model manufacturing outside of using a Chinese company. He's going to talk about other countries that have those capabilities and what the alternative is for model manufacturers to be able to get product produced in a wide range of different locations. We're also going to give you an update then on the train show from that afternoon and kind of have an open discussion, whatever you'd like to talk about. So I hope you'll come back next Saturday evening. I hope you learned a little bit tonight. Charlie, you did a fantastic presentation. I saw an awful lot of people congratulating you before they had to leave and go do other things tonight. So I want to thank you one last time. And I'll be in touch about you coming back and joining us again.
Yeah, Charlie left.
Gentlemen.
Yeah, Charlie left.
Okay.
Everything you're saying is Eastern time, right?
Everything is Eastern Standard. Yep. It's 1 o'clock in the afternoon Eastern time for the train show and 7 o'clock Eastern time for our regular meetup. Gentlemen, thank you so much. Have a great evening. I appreciate you coming. It's been great to see you.